Let's talk about one of the most powerful and most influential African kingdoms that you probably never heard of, the Kingdom of NRI. I know that you may have heard of the nation that currently is known as Nigeria. You may have even heard of the Igbo people, but have you heard about the Kingdom of NRI? Let me tell you. It was founded in 900 AD by a mythical figure that is referred to as Eri. Now, the tradition of the Igbo people say that Eri was a sky being, that he actually came down. He was a deity. He was sent from God to establish peace, justice, and harmony among the Igbo people. Incidentally, the rulers, the kings of this empire, NRI, were referred to as Eze NRI. And that is a reference to the original founder. They were considered to be descendants of this great king. But he's shrouded in mystery. So what makes the Kingdom of NRI special, interesting, worthwhile in terms of your studying and becoming familiar with? Well, a couple of things. As I said, it was founded in 900 AD. It lasted arguably until 1910 AD, so 1,000 years. Now keep in mind, if you've studied empires, what is called the imperial cycle, you'll know that nations or empires have a period in which they are gaining in strength and power and territory. And then they reach an apex, and then there's a stalemate, so to speak, a status quo, and then they go into declination. Now, the average length of time that it takes for this imperial cycle to complete itself is between 250 and 300 years. So then when you take into consideration that the Kingdom of NRI, which is located in modern-day Nigeria, particularly in the southeast portions of the modern-day country of Nigeria, you'll have to ask yourself, what was so amazing about this empire? How could they essentially last 3 times the normal length of an empire? It might surprise you how they pulled it off. To begin with, they had what was called a decentralized form of government. That means the government wasn't anchored or rooted or founded or based in one particular location, like if you were in the state of Florida, Tallahassee, or in the United States of America. It wasn't based in Washington, D.C. Although there was a type of Washington, D.C., or a main place, but the power was diffused. There were local tribal people and homesteads and local elders who contributed very largely to the day-to-day management of the kingdom. What made this empire great was the fact that they expanded not by the use of military force. See, most empires, the way that they come into existence is you've got a core group of people who share common religion, common faith, or common ethnic origin, and they agree that they should work together, but then they decide that they're going to acquire more territory, and they do that primarily through military conquest. And most of the African empires that we've discussed in the past and that we may discuss in the future primarily gained their territory and their influence in that way with a strong army or military conquest. So what's different about the Kingdom of NRI is that they use spiritual influence. In other words, they shared their faith and they created a zone or a region of spiritual influence. And in fact, the king of NRI was both a king and a priest. So the people used shared values, shared ideas about what is desirable, what is just, what will create a harmonious and self-perpetuating society. And they were right. The objective truth shows that they were right. They existed for roughly 1,000 years. Now, obviously, it wasn't all at the apex for that 1,000-year period. There was a period of climbing, but it was never at the edge of a sword. It was never at the edge of a spear. They used their higher selves. They used their heart. They used spiritual teaching. They used spiritual influence to persuade people to join in their spiritual movement. This is something that is unprecedented in world history, I think, in African history, and that's what makes the Kingdom of NRI unique. Another thing that makes the Kingdom of NRI unique is that they had an egalitarian system, and that means everyone shared evenly. There wasn't just a group of wealthy people who amassed possessions at the expense of poor people. There really wasn't, quote unquote, poor people in their society, because the role of government was to make sure that everyone had what they need. And they did have what they need, and they had more than they needed, and that's why they became wealthy and influential, because they were able to cultivate their crops and sell them on the open market. Now, one of the things that made NRI grow was that it was on a trade route, and so it was able to buy and to sell goods. Here's something that I think they get an attaboy about, because we can't say this about any other African empire. Often when some of our white brothers and sisters are trying to give us pushback on the topic of reparations and why black people should not be paid reparations, what they like to talk about is the fact that there were African kingdoms, African people who sold other African people into slavery. And as much as I'd like to dispute that, there is some reality, there is some fact in that. But I would say this, I'm not trying to explain why they did it, but they did it in the sense that when they went to battle with each other, in lieu of killing the people who had been subjugated or captured, they would sell them into slavery. So it wasn't that they were dealing in human beings, it was just something that happened in the course of conflict between the different empires. It doesn't make it right, I'm not justifying it. But here's where I think the Kingdom of NRI stands head and shoulders above every other African empire that I've ever read about, studied, heard about. They absolutely rejected and refused the institution of slavery. They refused to take part in the Atlantic slave trade as a matter of religious principle, as a matter of what was morally right. They thought that it was morally repugnant, and not only that, when slaves from other surrounding empires escaped, they fled to NRI, because if you made it to NRI, it would be the equivalent of the slaves in the United States fleeing from the south to the north. Once you got to NRI, you were protected. You were not going to be sent back to your master, your slave owner, wherever he or she was. It didn't happen. So it became this place, this gathering place. It was a place where scholars gathered. It was a place where religious experts gathered. But it was a place of liberation. So in that respect, it stood head and shoulders above the rest. Now, NRI was located in what is called, the Kingdom of NRI is located in what is called Igbo land. Nigeria has over 371 tribes. Sometimes we think that Africa is just 2 or 3 tribes. It's all one people. Just the nation, there are 54 nations, independent nations on the continent of Africa. Just in that one nation, there are 371 tribes. But within the nation of Nigeria, there are 3 main tribes, and these 3 main tribes make up 70% of the population. There's the Hausa Fulani, who live largely in the north, and then distinctive from the rest of the people because largely they practice the Muslim religion. There's the Yoruba, which I have some Yoruba ancestry in me, and perhaps that's why I'm doing this, maybe slightly. But there's Igbo, the Igbo tribe, which I am largely of Igbo African descent. These are the people, particularly that we're now focusing on, is the Igbo people. There's a myth to their origin. They claim that they are one of the lost tribes of Israel, as in Jacob had 12 sons. One of his sons, the seventh son, was named Gad. There are portions of the myth of origin to the Igbo people and directly related to the Kingdom of NRI, which claims that they were originally formed and came into existence while in Egypt, while the Hebrews were in bondage to Egypt, but they left before the Great Exodus. Now, whether that's been established as a matter of fact, I don't know. But whether it is a common belief among many people from Nigeria, particularly the Igbo people, that is a thing. It really does exist. They really do hold that to be a part of their origin. Whether they are or not, it doesn't take from the fact that this is a remarkable kingdom. And what's important to me when I think about the 1,000 years that they existed is it set a model for us, even today. There's more than one way to be powerful. There's more than one way to be influential. These people found a way not to conquer people, but to persuade them through conversation to join them. I think we need more of that going forward. That's the path to true freedom. That's the path to true equality. That's the path to true power. This empire, this great empire, the Kingdom of NRI, is worth looking into. Check it out. If you're interested in more Black history, about events and occurrences and people in the United States of America, as well as in ancient Africa, be sure to follow this page.